Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
A highway to go. Drug overdoses are never pretty. Kendra O'Connor, retired detective, sat at her favorite booth in her favorite cafe in all of London as she waited for her friends to arrive. Kendra loved how the wonderfully soft leather booth of the cafe provided just enough comfort to make her feel special, but enough support to give her aging back a break from its constant aching. The cold metal table in front of her had an amazingly strong black coffee in the cafe's largest mug, and the sweet, crispy, most delicious Chelsea bun the cafe had. Kendra had always loved the bun's fruity soft dough that covered her wrinkled fingers in a glorious layer of sugary icing. This cafe was amazing, and Kendra hoped it would never ever close, or not for another 20 years, because she could easily guess she'll be dead by then. The sound of people talking, laughing, and babies trying to talk made Kendra realize how much she loved being with the living, and after decades on the force with the Met Police, spending so much time with the living was a massive breath of fresh air. One she had only realized she loved after working with the Cold Case Task Force for the past month. As Kendra took a wonderful sip of her strong coffee, her smile deepened as she tasted all the utterly amazing bitter hints mixed in perfectly with seductive notes of hazelnut, gingerbread, and even a bit of vanilla. Kendra was definitely going to have to order another one of these before she left. But she couldn't help herself wonder why the task force's lead detective, retired Detective Jeff Long, had asked to meet here again. Normally they met at his house, her flat, or retired officer Patricia Nelson's apartment. It was great when they did meet up somewhere else, but bringing death, crimes, and cold cases into this cafe didn't feel right. After a few more sips of her wonderful coffee, Kendra nodded her hellos as Jeff Long and Patricia Nelson sat down across from her. Kendra loved how professional Jeff looked with his clean-shaved face, black business suit, and professionally cut hair. It looked like he was going to some major interview today. Then 70-something Patricia, as always, was the perfect contrast to Jeff with her long gray hair, white silk blouse, and bright blue necklace. Kendra's eyes narrowed on the necklace. It was so beautiful, so shiny, and so expensive. It even made Patricia look 10 years younger. Jeff waved over a young waiter and ordered a large coffee with him, and Patricia ordered a large chai latte. Kendra shook her head as a joke. She had tried chai lattes before, but there was something different about them that she didn't like. "What's with the suit?" Kendra asked. Jeff smiled and shook his head. "One of my grandkids is getting married, so I had to go shopping earlier." "Congrats," Kendra and Patricia said. "Thanks. But I'm only wearing it because, when I was in the changing rooms, the shopkeeper put my clothes outside the room. Then a junior man sold them to another customer." Kendra and Patricia busted out laughing. "It's not funny. I had to walk about the store half naked for 10 minutes. Kendra still smiled and failed to suppress her laughter. "Bless ya, hon," Patricia said. "What's the cold case today?" Jeff looked relieved to change the conversation, but Kendra knew it was brilliant, and she was definitely telling her husband later. Jeff took a cold case file out of his suit and laid it out on the table. "It seems we need to investigate a strange drug overdose." Kendra covered her mouth as she gasped. She hated drug overdose, especially when the victims were young people. She hated to think about all the drug dealers profiting from so many deaths. It was disgusting, but it was widespread in London, and something she had hoped to stop. But if anything, and Kendra knew her perspective was biased, the number of drug deaths only seemed to be increasing each year. Kendra picked up one of the photos and frowned as she looked at a young man, 26 years old, with white foaming all around his mouth, his eyes bulging and his body covered in trash. That alone was disgraceful. How dare someone try to hide a body in such an awful way? People, dead or alive, deserved so much more respect than that. Kendra had to find out who did this, and get the family, friends, and victim closure. "What's the cold case in detail?" Kendra asked. "Quite simple, really. Young man with a dodgy heart found dead 8 years ago, in 2014 in some alley covered in trash. Cause of death was drug overdose, cocaine, and there was never anyone charged," Jeff said. "Why is it a cold case, hun?" Kendra pointed to all the trash around him. "Because this trash was found on top of him, so someone had to put it there." "Are the man a drug user?" "All signs and tests show no," Jeff said. Kendra felt a bit relieved by that. She never liked people using drugs in the first place, and at least the young man wouldn't just be seen as another drug statistic. But whilst that might be true, Kendra still needed to find out what happened. Kendra flicked through more of the report as Patricia took out her high-tech laptop and bought up the original report. "What about this, Hans? Coroner found no needle marks, no coke around his mouth or nose or in his throat." "Really?" Kendra asked. That alone was strange, because if this was murder, then killers tended to either inject their victims or force it down their throat. But no one had, strangely. Patricia nodded. Coroner found nothing else. But damage to the chest, like someone had tried to do CPR. "That makes no sense," Jeff said. "Did the coroner make any guesses about it?" Kendra laughed as she pointed to the name on the coroner's report, and Patricia and Jeff just rolled their eyes. The coroner on the case was a great coroner, a great man and a good friend to Kendra, but he was useless at guessing. It was probably what made him a great coroner, but every little thing had to be fact-based with him. He was never going to guess. "Have the pics of the CPR?" Kendra asked. "Pics?" Jeff said, smiling. "That's what my grandkids call pictures." "How the times change," Jeff said. Kendra could only nod to that. "Here they are," Patricia said, pointing to the CPR bruising on the young man's chest. From Kendra could see the bruising looked like someone had given the young man hard CPR, in some desperate attempt to save him. But it made no sense. Why give someone a drug overdose only to try and save them? What if the death was just an accident? First time drug use gone wrong? Jeff asked. Kendra wanted to agree with him, but there were no needle marks or tracks around his nose or mouth. There was no way. "What happened to the body?" Kendra asked. "Don't know. I'll check, hun." "What you thinking? Did the coroner ever check for a hypodermic needle behind the ear, fingernails or footnails?" Patricia looked it up and shook her head. "He checked the ears and fingernails, but the feet nails weren't looked at." "What you thinking?" Jeff asked. "What if the entire crime scene was staged? The murder happened in a bad part of London, with no foot traffic or any traffic for that matter. The killer had time, and there's another use for CPR," Kendra said. Patricia and Jeff looked at each other and shrugged. CPR is used to get the heart to pump blood around the body. So if you inject something into the body, you can use CPR to pump it round when the victim is already dead, Kendra said. Jeff nodded, as if he had just learned something amazing. "Here. The body was set to be destroyed, but the family claimed it and had it frozen in a cryogenics lab," Patricia said. Kendra half smiled, half frowned at that. The general idea was interesting enough about cryogenics, like keeping the head and body frozen in a perfect way until future technology could be developed to resurrect the dead. But as far as Kendra was concerned, it was science fiction, but it could be helpful. "If we can get the family to agree to a new autopsy or at least an examination, we might be able to find the truth," Kendra said as she leant forward. The young waiter came back with Jeff's and Patricia's drinks, and Kendra had to frown slightly at the young male waiter. He looked so happy, so glad to be helping people, and he looked like he had his entire life before him. The young victim was probably like that. Kendra had to get the truth, justice, and closure for the victim and families. She had to do this. I don't think the victim died of a cocaine overdose, or not at least from the cocaine we found in his blood. I think a hypodermic needle was used in the footnails to deliver the coke, then CPR was done, Kendra said. But then how did the young man die? Patricia asked. Kendra pointed again to the man's medical history. His heart was dodgy at the best of times. A mega fright could have killed him. And the amount of coke found would probably look like a heart attack, Jeff said. In one way or another, yes, Kendra said. Jeff took a sip of his coffee, stood up and took out his flip phone. I'll talk to the family and get the process in motion. Thank you, Kendra said. What do you want us to do? Jeff shrugged. Finish your drinks and sweet treats? As Kendra picked up her massive mug of coffee and Chelsea bun, she realized she didn't need to be told twice. Jeff came back to the table about 2 hours later, and Kendra had just about finished her massive mug of coffee, and Patricia was on green tea after drinking another 2 chai lattes. Kendra had tried a mouthful of the chai lattes, and nope, she really didn't like them. Her problem wasn't so much the wonderfully warming spices but the sweetness. Kendra loved her coffee strong, bitter, and burning. She didn't like sweet coffee in the slightest. But the past 2 hours had been wonderful with Patricia. They got to talk more about their husbands, their kids and grandchildren, and everything else in between. As Jeff sat down, he smiled at Kendra and Patricia, and Kendra hoped everything was okay. You were right, Kendra, Jeff said. The family were actually at the cryogenics place today to cancel the subscription. They were going to bury their son next week. Kendra took a breath she didn't know she was holding. She was relieved that her request hadn't put too much stress on the family. That was the last thing she would ever want. A new autopsy was done. It was a slow day for the coroner. Turns out there were 3 needle marks under the left foot's big toes. It was surprisingly smaller than a hypodermic needle, Jeff said. Kendra's eyes widened. She didn't know such a thing existed. The man's heart was examined using a new fancy tool, and you were right. It was a heart attack, and now we know the real purpose of the CPR. The medical examiner has ruled the cause of death was heart attack brought on by fear. But who killed him? Patricia asked. Jeff smiled and leant in closer. Once we knew that, I got a detective friend of mine to re-look at all the suspects in the case. The victim's medical history was kept extremely quiet, and only 3 people knew about it. His mom, dad, and his best friend. Kendra leant back slightly and nodded. Let me guess, the best friend had access to coke? Yes, the best friend is currently serving time for a number of drug offenses, including attempted murder of another drug dealer. So we have our killer? Patricia asked. Kendra and Jeff looked at each other and nodded. It seemed so strange to Kendra that an 8-year-old cold case had been so strange that one best friend murdered another using a weird method, but that was the way the world worked. The weirder the crime, the harder it was to solve, but in all honesty, Kendra knew all the best friend had to do to make sure he never got found out was not to use the CPR. It was getting the body high that gave the best friend away, and now he would be charged with yet another crime. But most importantly, the family, friends, and victim would finally get closure for the murder. And that was amazing to Kendra. As Jeff finished up the last phone call to complete the case and tell the active detectives everything they needed, Kendra finished her massive mug of coffee and looked at her 2 new nest friends. Of course they would never kill her, and all Kendra wanted to do now was simply talk with them and be amongst the living, and that was what she fully intended to do.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested. And you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore, or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ConnorWhite. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Wiley Verse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.